we all doing? Now, this is an intimate time. I just have to say thank you all for being here. Oh, here they all come. See, they really listen. When I was approached, and I have my lovely speaker coaches here today, Aaliyah Cross. And Aaliyah, she said, so Jake, you know, people are going to be coming in, and she said, as I prepare this with you, I want you to make sure you're giving them Jake the person, not presenter Jake. And I said, okay, tell me more about what that means. And I said, you know what, I need you to tell me a little bit more about that. And she said, well, they're here for you. And I said, I love that for me. So let me get going. I am so excited to talk about patterns today. Patterns, I think, we often view as courses of action, steps we take. And in my opinion, actually patterns can be things we align with, values and goals that we develop for ourselves and we put in place to set us up for success. And so the bottom two, I believe that's the right, they don't usually let me teach math, but the bottom two is an apple and theater masks. And those represent my true pattern. And I'm gonna walk this way to see y'all. So if the projector comes on to me, it's just a light for you to get that photo, right? And if I fall, please record it so we can go viral. Okay, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. So the apple is who I am to my core. And you're gonna see a little detour there, which is gonna become my gray. But the apple and the theater masks is really probably what you already could tell from. Okay, I'm very theatrical, I'm very expressive, and I bring that to the classroom. I bring that to things that I do. I bring that to the parties where I make them dress up like a celebrity for my 30th birthday. Okay, I bring that, right? I bring that to anywhere I am because it's just who I am to my core. And the theater masks is kind of how that gets explained, but the apple is I am in my element when I am working towards our goal in this country, towards a literate future for all. So the reason I'm here today really is because Annie and Kelly saw that. We are at 34 proficient fourth graders in reading right now in the country. And so it does take things like this, where maybe you didn't know that and now you do. Or one share, one follow, one podcast listen, to just know a little bit more about what we need in this country. Because literacy really is a right. So until every kid can read, I'll be up on this stage doing all the things. Now, there's people here, and they cut the house lights up so I can see them laugh at me, but I often get told that I'm a zip code jumper. Okay, I've got mail coming to about my 5 previous residences because one of them is right here, and she still gets my mail. So that zip code jump is really what the pattern I develop, where I often get called the headline friend. If I'm texting, there's probably something new going on, I've booked something new in another city, or I took another job, or I've added something to my plate, but it's always going to be tied back to those 2 things on the bottom right, which is the pattern for me. The pattern for me is not always actions, but really what I am to my core, values I look for, and if those 2 things aren't present, then I know I need to make a shift. So, the first shift I made was up at the top left, California. I taught for 2 years, didn't seem to have any problems with the goals I had decided for myself, but I needed to have a little bit of gray, which a lot of us in the audience probably have found themselves in a gray. Am I gonna find myself in the teaching space? This is 2017 at the time. Or am I gonna find myself in the theater space? In the film space. So I quit. In 2017, I quit teaching and I moved to LA. I brought everything with me though, because I had to have the couch. And I thought, okay, so this is completely different. This is a big risk. I won't be teaching. All my comfort's gonna be gone. And I moved to LA, but then I started to notice my pattern at my core coming. So I started to be an assistant to a producer for a film company. But guess what I started to do? Help her set up the office space. Help the clients feel welcome. Do you want sparkling or still? Okay. Right. Do you want 12 Diet Cokes or 13, Jenna Fisher? If you like The Office. I don't anymore. Kidding. But, so that's what I started to do. And I started to realize, oh, this is the pattern. I'm literally making a community for her small company. I'm helping clients come in. She's always like, oh, talk to Jake, he'll make them laugh and smile, right? And so then I started to think, oh, so really I'm doing teachery things, and there was no way for me to not do that, because it was the pattern I knew to be true to myself. So then I decided I didn't want to become anyone around me, and I went back to teaching, and now here I am. So this headline is what I wanted to show you. This is my logo for my website in the middle of a little headline circle, because that headline was really something that made me insecure for a while. For a while I thought, oh, am I just so unsettled? I'm always moving. Now I'm moving back from LA. Now I was teaching at this school. There really wasn't a huge problem. Why did I then move to another school? And I started to think, am I unsettled? Am I not happy with myself? Am I not secure? But really, it was those checklists we put on ourselves. And so I'm going to show you what I mean by that. But the way I came up with this is I had to ask myself, who am I without all of these things? Now, to be clear, I love these things, and these things are not bad. But I want you to start thinking about, what is your list of questions? What are you as your job, as a mom, as a parent, as an aunt, an uncle, a sister, a spouse? Who am I when I'm not teaching? Who am I when I go home and I don't have DMs to respond to, website inquiries to respond to, a quote to give to a school? Who am I when I'm not doing that? Who are you when you're not doing what you wake up and do, what you have to set the alarm for? Is your pattern still there? So I just love how Aaliyah asked me to really think about the questions I'm asking myself, because I'm asking them actually right now, because I am up here speaking. So I now have to ask, when I go home today though, what's inside me? Because this was going to go well, because it was prepared, right? But then who am I in the dark? Who am I when I sit down to re-watch Grey's Anatomy for the 18th time? It's actually still on, so I don't have to re-watch. Just tune in. Premiered when I was in 5th grade. So, love that for them and me and the tattoos on my arm. So, this is how I came up with this talk. Do you notice on the left? What we celebrate for children? Maybe the students I have from my class last year. Can we give Max and Arlo a round of applause? And is Heather from New York here? Heather came from New York to see me this morning. Can we give her a round of applause? That means a lot to me that you're all here. And what I want you to know is how I came up with all of this. And this really is the core of it. The minute you take a child home, you're an aunt, you're an uncle, you're a parent, you're getting into a routine. When is nap time? When is bedtime? When are they going to have their first bottle? When are they going to go to daycare? What time will they be picked up from daycare so that they're supported? Who's on pickup duty, right, Jess? Who's on pickup? Is it Gigi? Is it Chris? right? Those routines support children. So, interesting how then they want to take the training wheels off the bike. What do? We smile, we celebrate, and if they fall, that's okay, you took them off. We celebrate failure. That's how we learn. But do we do that for adults? The ego comes in. Well, I would take a risk on hiring you, but then that may fall back on me, so I'm hesitant. Oh, I would promote you, but you know how it is, my hands are tied. I would give you the job, but how might that look? Because you knew her, and so we're just gonna go with the other person. You know what? Right, then they get those plans of improvement out, and then they think they come in with their clipboard, and they're really gonna help. Right, they're gonna really help. They got the clipboard. Shoot, they got 2 out of 5, fired. Right, that's what they do though. That's what they do for us. And so, is there a celebration of failure? No. And in fact, what do we put on Instagram? The non-failures. What do we put on Facebook? The non-failures. So then we get the comparison. Comparison is deadly. Comparison really is the thief of joy. It's the thief of joy. So I noticed that then you've worked a job for a while. I've got one of my best friends, Joel. He's worked in Wauwatosa for 25 years, so is Caroline. But you know what? They're not complacent. They're not bored. They found to their core what speaks to them, their pattern. So then they can take some risks within that. Maybe you've got to stay somewhere only for 5 months because it's not speaking to your core. So that's something I like to think about. Now this picture on the left was a student of mine that came in this past August, first percentile. And we were doing our spelling, and they were to write the sound that they hear. Remember Maxie, Arlo, right? We love sounds, right? You probably love it just as much as me. But look, do you see what he was able to produce on day 1? And is this not day 1 for us anywhere new? This is what that looks like when you're trying to find the bathroom at your new job, and you want to ask the person in the cubicle, and they're like, oh, let me see what frames they have too. Are they married? You know, or you're coming around saying, do we all eat lunch together? Or is it more of a lunch by yourself thing? Right? You're kind of a mess when you start something new. Even someone who's never been to CreativeMornings, do we send the front? Oh, he didn't ask me anyway, I just kind of sit in the middle. Right? That's what we do. That's day 1. You move to a new apartment. Where's the grocery I'm gonna walk to? Where's the Stone Creek I'm gonna go to? Where's the closest one? Or the discourse. That's what I meant. The discourse. Biggest latte I've ever had, I swear. Talk about pattern. So, this was his day 1 reality. It just is. And then I jumped to an adult friend. So, this is my friend Kyle, and he moved to Hawaii in March. Just said, I'm just gonna head out. And I had just moved underneath him for wine nights. And now, he left. But, you know what? I even had that judgment on the right side, on the adult side. I even said, do you have a contract? And some people in the room even were in those conversations with me, and I really had to push myself. What does he need from me to activate his safety for this move? So this is what he needed from me, and this is what my student needed from me. So first of all, I'm sweating when I'm at my pattern. When I'm with a literacy challenge, when I'm with a student, when I'm with someone who's going to reach a potential, I am sweating. If you are sweating, metaphorically or truly, you are passionate about what you're doing. If you're not sweating, do you need to think about your inner pattern? Is it being fulfilled? Is where you are aligned, is where you are serving you. Listening, critiquing, and reflecting, these are what dear friends do for us when we need to decide if the pattern is currently serving us. So this is what they needed from me. And I'd like to show you Jordan's 3rd month. And so was routine. He needed a pattern that was going to allow him to be safe. He needed to know I was going to be there to have underline in yellow the patterns that we had just practiced. He needed to know I was going to be authentically there every day. We weren't going to switch up the order because there's no need. Because guess what? When we're successful at something, we tend to be joyful. And so he needed structure, he needed pattern, he needed routine, he needed consistency, but he also needed authenticity because he was going to know if I didn't want to be there. Kids know immediately. Kids know immediately. And you know what? So do we. We know immediately when someone doesn't want to be in a space. And so here's Kyle up on a mountain, hopefully with bug spray. I always say, I'll take a photo outside with bug repellent. So I am outdoorsy. But he did not get any of the 3 jobs that he moved for. He had 3 offers on the table. He said, I'm just going to go. I'm going to go on March 5th. And I said, well, let me throw the going away party because it's March 1st. So he moved the flight because I needed them to use my new Crate and Barrel glasses. So he found himself, though, loving Hawaii to this day. And you know why? Because he went for the pattern that worked here that allowed him to risk being on the plane. So he now works in the 2 things he did here in Milwaukee. He works 4 days for a coffee company that's now already promoted him, and he works for a theater as a props designer. And none of those things were in place when he moved, but he just walked down the street. But you know what? How interesting that that's what happened to me in LA. You find yourself doing what to your core, your pattern, brings you to. But he was able to know he could do that. He can work in coffee. He can work in theater. So that allows that comfort. That's the foundation. So when you look here, that's the framework, the familiarity. That's going to allow for the risk. Do you notice we often think these are oxymorons? If you're in a pattern, you're complacent. If you're in a pattern, you're boring. If you're in a pattern, you're not taking risk. But can the pattern actually serve the risk? Can they work together? Can the foundation and the framework of the same phonics instruction allow that student to know what to expect? Anita Archer's favorite quote of mine, predictability actually predicts ability. What we expect is what we get. So if you expect a failure, what we expect is what we get. But if you know who you are with your patterns, what you need to have in place, the foundation, you can take a leap. These work together. And so I really looked around after 11 months in LA, and I thought, okay, so I said, okay, so I moved my entire life. I shipped my car. I just got promoted by her. Things were going great. But I didn't want to be anyone that was in that office. I looked around. Not bad on them, but I didn't want to be anyone around me. The associate producer, the producer, the executive producer, and the lifetime execs. I didn't want to become any of them. I looked around and I said, I don't feel joy in this right now. I was doing fine. Nothing they were doing is bad, but I didn't want to become them. So that's where I had lost my foundation and framework. Where was my literacy? Where was my theater? That's my pattern. Where did that go? Then I realized with her kid, she started asking me about what books to buy. So then what happened? A little spine, right? Then where I was, then I was talking about books she could order, things she could do to develop. So then all of a sudden, there was my pattern, but that's when I knew. So you know what I did? I came back in March, And I came to see these 5 people, and I visited the school I left and booked my flight back. So actually, when I go to the next slide, sometimes the boldness is to step it back to that pattern. It's not always a forward thing. Sometimes being bold is saying, I'm actually going to have to return to what I was doing. I loved this risk for me. It's not in my pattern though, so I'm actually going to go back. It's not backward motion, it's boldness. But we often think, what will people say? Oh my God, he's coming back after 11 months. Did he not do well? What are they going to say? He's back to teaching? Is that really growth? It is, because in my heart, the smile came back. Right? So you need a landing point. Sometimes we take risks that have nothing to do with the pattern at our core, and then suddenly it just doesn't feel right. I had a friend who had a dream job, and after 2 months, he was crying every day on the way. And I said, that's because it was not, you don't have your pattern there, you don't have your foundation. This doesn't speak to you. Well, what will they say? Then we think about LinkedIn. What's it going to look like? I left a job after that much time. Should I not announce it? Now he owns a fitness studio, and he gets there at 6 a.m., and the classes are booked. And he loves his life. So, it's the boldness. So, what about you? Where do you work? What is your life? And what patterns are you in? Because sometimes you have to critique it. Sometimes you have to think, who created the expectations to which you're holding yourself? And I'll be honest, because I think my contract's over there, so I'm going to say. Here's the thing. When someone comes in and they've got their checklist, right? Maybe it's mental, maybe it's your boss, your supervisor, right? Or maybe it's a family member that's holding you to expectations. Then you start to think, but why am I trying to comply to those? Are those serving my growth? That's why I'm such an advocate for education. I told you, 34% proficient. So what we're doing, this pattern has to be critiqued in America. The way we're mentoring teachers, the way we're mentoring parents has to be critiqued. If you don't know, find a way to discover. Critique your pattern. What is the point? Are you holding yourself to a checklist of what you think you should be doing? Is someone else that's coming in, is it compliance-based? Okay, so is that the learning target on that board? Okay, are the kids, well, they look like they're kind of, I think they're learning. Okay, thank you. Oops, that was unexpected. Right, because here's the thing, are we studying success or are we studying the checklist? How many times do we go into a classroom and instead of figure out if it aligns to the curriculum, let's just see, is it successful? What are the children doing? What are the children doing? STEM success instead of the compliance. This can work for any job. Am I successful? Turns out I did it a completely different way than you told me to in the manual. But is it successful? Then I've grown. I've helped someone grow. So that's where I've been able to come to where I am today. This tattoo is on my arm, season 6, episode 3, Grey's Anatomy. It was okay that George died. I mean, it was a struggle character. Okay, I mean, we laughed, though. We laughed. Okay, but this quote, this actually is the day I signed my contract at Carmen, at Stellar Elementary. This is the day that I found a school that was going to let me be myself. At the time, I was at a place that was figuring a lot of things out. A lot of different leadership than it has today. And so this tattoo was the day I signed my contract, and Ava was with me when I got this tattoo on Brady Street. They're still open. But the only cure for your paranoia is to truly be here as you are. So I have to sit and say, when I walk into this school, is this serving growth for the children? When I walk into this job, is this serving me? Have I found a place that is not taxing? Have I found a place where I can critique the pattern, but my pattern is there? Because the gray is that sometimes you have to go between two spaces until you find it. I had to go to LA and back before I found that pattern. So you need to be where you are when you're asking those questions, not what happened. A lot of times we say, well, but she needed me to do that, and so I said yes. Oh, I needed to try because I felt like they would say something if not. Those are not where you are. It's where you are right now. And so these are the questions I like to ask myself as I close today. Are you inspired by what's around you? I am right now. We are right now. But when I go to my job, when I go to spend time with my family, when I go with my cousins, wherever I am I inspired by what's around me? Can I see myself as a leader? Because when I looked around that office in LA, I didn't want to become a leader there. It didn't align with my pattern. I didn't want to stay there. It was not a bad thing for them, but for me, it didn't align. And so, would you want to be, even if you don't, would you want to be a leader where you work? If they asked you, would you say yes? Would you say yes? Is it taxing to persist there? Because I know personal friends in this audience that have been in a taxing place, and they're not now. Because they owned that growth. They critiqued the checklist that they were being held to. When is it time? Maybe it's time after 25 years. Maybe it's time after 1 year. Maybe it's time after 1 month. But when is it time? Because if you don't feel it here, then there is no pattern to your core that you're sticking to. So, this is my final word. And you know what? Yes, it's also what I share in my phonics presentations and Aaliyah, my speaker coach, she said, I really like this for your Creative Mornings talk. And I said, but this is literally how I teach phonics. Like, they're not all going to be phonics teachers, but you know what? I actually do love it for this. So if you don't try enough, you don't have enough at-bats. Now, that can still be just a week or two, but you gotta at least give it enough chances to fail. Again, adults don't celebrate failure. Now we will. Now we will, and if you don't tag me. Okay? Articulatory, say it out loud to someone. I have a lot of people in this room that have mentored me in my life. Some did this morning. Some are mentoring me by being here. Some have traveled to see me speak in Dallas and Nashville from New York. So say it out loud what you're struggling with to a dear friend, to a mentor, to somebody. Articulate it. Because we say that for kids, the biological processor. Sound is the permanent memory peg. So, do you know what hand the Statue of Liberty is holding the torch in? How many of you were maybe not positive right away? Visual memory isn't permanent, sound memory is. That's why kids flip a Bianchi. Why are they different? They're not to them. It's the same Statue of Liberty, but our visual memory is not permanent. It needs to follow a vision that you're holding for yourself. And guess what? For mine, it was moving back to achieve that vision and pattern. It's not always a new place. You might go back somewhere. And predictable. We see that as so boring. But look what Jared could do after 72 days. He is glittering. Because it was predictable, it had a foundation, a framework. I don't. Yes. And I don't believe in luck. Right. It's your preparation. So this is on a plaque in my dining group. Thank goodness I got a window here unit. So I can look at it now. I'm going to sit in there. But this really is what I hope to leave you with today. Is that everything you're doing is a critique of that pattern for yourself. I had to thank Annie and Kelly for watching the Kelly Clarkson show on January 9th and seeing me on there and inviting me to join the Creative Mornings family. If you're here today, I thank you. This means so much to me that you are here. I will be sticking around after a couple announcements for photos and chats. And my name is Jake, and I just thank you all so much for coming today.